Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharin Stories. I am your host, Peaks, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Sarah States and the real St. Paul. This is not a therapy session. You will not find mental health professionals here. You will not find, you are not a substitute for said people. We are just regular people sharing and hopefully normalizing our stories with mental health. We are so excited to have Glenda Lezeau on the podcast today. Glenda is a big mental health advocate. She brings awareness through her social media account and her blog, Rising from Bipolar. She is an author with a published book, Letters to My Bipolar Self, where she wrote 50 loving letters to herself in an act of healing, which can be found at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Good. I like that strut you got going. It's definitely a big thing. That's awesome. And we cannot wait to hear her story. So let's all welcome Glenda. Glenda, thank you so much for being on today. We are so excited to have you, and I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit.
Yes.
Awesome. We definitely cut off, but I think you guys are back. So what was the last part, Andrew?
I just want to say I'm excited to get to know you, and I'm very much looking forward to your story.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
If you guys see me eating a Go-Gurt, it's because I teach a bunch of kids during the day, and I need to eat. So I'm going to be eating this Go-Gurt.
No judgment.
No, you go for it.
Okay. All right, let's just get started.
Yeah.
All right, Glenda, whenever you're ready, you can just take it away.
Awesome. I'm ready. So as you all know, I'm Glenda Lezeau. I am an author, blogger, mental wellness advocate. And my story started probably way back 2004 or so, but I didn't realize my story was starting there as one of those things. So I had symptoms of mental health issues since junior high school. So 2004, even high school as well. But I completely ignored it. I completely pushed it away. I didn't want to believe that it was true. And so I entered college with mental health issues, again, pushing it away, pretending I didn't have any issues. I graduate May 2011, and November 2011, I started a new job. So I was excited, my real first job out of college. And I got off work on Friday, and Saturday morning, I kind of just woke up really confused because I had a weird nightmare. And the nightmare was my assistant manager and my manager, they had stolen my identity, and they're waving my ID like, haha, we got you, you're screwed, we framed you. And I woke up like, oh my goodness, no, this can't be real. And I'm telling myself, Glenda, it's just a nightmare. Like, your ID is fine. But I felt the need to still go look to make sure my ID was there. And I went to go look for my ID, and it wasn't there. And that's where the symptoms started. So that dream, that nightmare wasn't a nightmare. That was actually a hallucination. At the time, I didn't know that, but it was a hallucination. And also the whole run in to look for my ID was a symptom of paranoia. And so from that moment, I just continued to have all types of symptoms of psychosis, back to back to back, from hallucinations, visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, paranoia. And none of my family members could calm me down. My parents, they couldn't do anything. They tried, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't help. My sister would try, it would help just a little bit, but the psychosis was just getting out of control. And it also wasn't, when I say psychosis or hallucinations, I'm not talking about something as small as, ooh, there's pretty clouds. No. Every single one of my symptoms were negative. I mean, think of your worst nightmares coming true. That's the type of symptoms I had. So perfect example, I had a visual hallucination, and mind you, I was inside the whole time, but I would have these hallucinations in other locations. And I was inside the backseat of my dad's car. My dad's driving. I think my mom might have been next to me. So again, this is a visual hallucination. And we're crossing a huge intersection, probably about 6 lanes, right? And I'm looking to my left, and I see an ambulance. I see there was some type of accident. And I don't remember if I saw a body bag or if I saw someone get into ambulance, but I'm saying to myself in the hallucination, I can't believe I was part of a hit and run. I really hope I didn't kill anyone. I hope everyone's okay. And that was just like me just saying that to myself in the hallucination. And then it ended, and then other hallucinations or paranoia would pop up. So that's a type of hallucinations that I was experiencing. So it's very, very traumatic in the moment. I didn't know what was happening because when I had symptoms before in high school and junior high, it was more of anxiety, some depressive states, such like that. But it wasn't anything like this. This was the first time I had any type of symptom of psychosis in this way. And so finally, my parents realized I'm not eating, my symptoms are getting worse, I'm pacing up and down, and they realized they need to send me to the hospital. But I wouldn't get into the car because of other paranoid thoughts, or I'm like, we're going to get into an accident, et cetera, et cetera. So they had to call 911. And so they called 911. They practically my parents and my sister practically dragged me out of the house because I wouldn't leave the house because of other paranoid thoughts and other delusional thoughts. And so finally the ambulance comes. They're trying to speak to me, but I'm not really responsive. They can tell I've completely lost all sense of reality. And so they had to take out this huge needle and stab me with it to kind of sedate me a little bit, to keep me a little bit calmer. And then you had to like strap me down and then send me to the hospital. And it was a weird experience because I've never been in a hospital before or admitted to a hospital before, and I definitely was never rushed to a hospital. So it really felt like some type of Grey's Anatomy episode where I reached there and they're like, all right, 22-year-old female, and they're cutting up my clothes. And I'm just like, what is happening? So bizarre. And so even though I was in the hospital, they kept me overnight, but they didn't admit me to the psychiatric unit. So my parents took me to a private psychiatrist. And when they took me to a private psychiatrist, I was kind of doing a little bit better, but the psychiatrist said, okay, give her this medication, but if the symptoms come back, give her this. So for a day or two, I was good. Then the symptoms came back. And my parents found a way to force me to take it because I just wouldn't want to take it. I still wasn't getting better. The symptoms were just getting worse and worse. I'm not sleeping through the night. I'm up all night having all types of symptoms. And then so finally Thursday, unfortunately on Thanksgiving Day, my parents were like, we're gonna have to take her to the hospital again because she's not getting any better. We gave her the medication that the psychiatrist told us to give if the symptoms came back. It's not getting better. She's not eating, she's not sleeping. And so they rushed me to the hospital. This time out, they were able to get me in the car. Don't ask how. I like, it took a lot of force and pushing me out. And once I reached the hospital, that's when they not diagnosed me. That's when they admitted me. They're like, yeah, she needs to be admitted. So that's when I was admitted on Thanksgiving Day at the psychiatric unit. And probably within a few days, that's when they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. So now I'm not going to touch too much on like what bipolar disorder is for the sake of the story, but I do want to say, some of you who are not familiar with bipolar disorder are like, how does she have symptoms of psychosis, hallucinations? That's bipolar disorder? How is that? So let me explain that. So with bipolar disorder, one symptom is mania. Mania, the best way to describe it is heightened energy. So you're just up here. It's different per person. For some people, it's intense anxiety. For some people, it's this sense of, oh, I get to spend lots and lots of money that I don't have. It looks different for everyone. But for some reason, a lot of the times when I'm having a manic episode, which the mental breakdown I just described to you, that was a manic episode, my mania is attached to psychosis most of the time. And so that's why I was having those type of symptoms. And that's why the diagnosis is still bipolar disorder, because the psychosis is attached to my mania. And just to go a little bit further, that means that I never have psychosis that's isolated when I'm not having mania. So for example, some people, depending on their diagnosis, they might have symptoms of psychosis that can happen at any point, right? But for me, it's only attached to my mania. And that's why the diagnosis is bipolar disorder. So they diagnosed me. At first, I was just like, what? What does that even mean? What do you mean I have a condition, right? Because I've been in denial for 7+ years. So I'm like, a condition? What do you mean? But at that moment, because of everything that I've been through, I had to accept it because I'm like, I definitely had a breakdown and I don't want to experience that again. So something is definitely wrong, right? And so in that moment in the hospital, a lot of things happened. The first thing that happened is I realized I needed to work on myself, not only mentally, but just in general. I realized that I needed to incorporate more self-love into my life. I realized I needed to incorporate more positive thoughts into my life because I realized how negative my thought processes was. And I realized that I really needed to take care of my mental health and actually go to therapy, even though I was afraid of it, and actually take the medication that they're giving me. The other thing that happened was that's when I first felt my calling to be a mental wellness advocate. I didn't call it that at the time, but I did feel the need to share my story with others and help others. And that happened in the hospital. Like I was literally hospitalized, talking to other people that I'm hospitalized with as if I'm a clinician. And I'm just, looking back, I'm like, Glenda, like you just had all types of psychosis symptoms a few days ago, and you're here trying to school whoever, and you need help. Can you please, like, come on? But that doesn't show you like how much of the purpose. I was like, oh, keep going. It's okay. Talk to me. What are you going through? Like, Glenda, what are you going through?
Like, get you out of yourself first.
Yeah, can you take care of yours? Like, it's nice that you want to help, but like you still hospitalized. Like you still trying to figure this out. But just to give you an idea of the purpose was there. Like it was obvious, right? But for years, I was afraid of it. I was afraid to share my story. I was afraid of what people would think. I was afraid of the stigma. I was even afraid talking to certain friends and family members about my symptoms, let alone talking to others about it. So for years, I didn't really do anything. I would think about it all the time, but I wouldn't do anything. And December 2016, I had another breakdown, right? So that's about like a 5 years difference. But this time, there wasn't as much psychosis. It was not nearly as bad as the first one, and I didn't have to be hospitalized. But I was reminded of that purpose in that moment. Glenda, why aren't you doing something related to mental wellness? And that's when I started. I think it was January 2017. That's when I started rising from bipolar. Unfortunately, I had a third breakdown, and that was August 2017. And some people, well, actually, I don't know what some people think, but I can imagine how some people might think like, wait, but Glenda, you've been doing work in the community and you're a mental wellness advocate. How did you have another breakdown, right? But for me, I didn't see it as a weakness. Of course, I was shocked. Everyone was shocked, even my therapist, like, who's in the hospital? What do you mean? I was doing really well, but there's just certain things that I missed and that I didn't realize was a problem. And my third breakdown made me notice that. And so what's interesting though, even though I had a third breakdown and even though I was hospitalized, I saw a difference on how I handled the symptoms. And to me, that was a sign of mental strength. Yes, I had another breakdown, but how I handled it really proved to me how far I've come from 2011. And so from that moment on, I've continued sharing my story. I've continued to inspire others. I feel like, in a sense, I'm a light worker and feel the need to just spread the light to others. And also, I don't view my condition as a sign of weakness or that there's something wrong with me because I have bipolar disorder. I have a unique perspective. And I think with that unique perspective, it helps me elevate myself as a whole. And to be quite honest, ever since I was diagnosed, I actually became a way, way better person. And in some ways, I actually have more joy now than I did before I was diagnosed. And that's with the unique perspective. Bipolar disorder saved me. It really did. It saved me from myself. And one thing, for example, I feel like sometimes it's very easy to be attached to your condition, but I'm not attached to it. Like I recognize I have bipolar disorder. I accept my symptoms, but I'm not attached to it to the point where it's my whole identity. Bipolar disorder is just something I have. It's not who I am. So you won't ever hear me say I'm bipolar because I'm not bipolar. I just have bipolar, right? So I have a very unique perspective and really like to share it with others, especially since I've been through it, right? I'm not just a clinician or professional telling you, do this, do that. I live it. This is literally my life. And I don't just say certain inspirational things because it's the cool thing to say, or I want people to be like, wow, that's powerful. No, like this is literally what goes on in my mind. But don't get me wrong, I have my challenges. There are times where it's like, oh my gosh, can I keep pushing through? But for the most part, those moments happen less and less the more I cultivate this relationship with myself and love myself despite this condition. And on top of that, learn from the condition, because I feel like there's a reason why I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I don't think it's like luck or, oh my goodness, why me? No, there's a reason. I needed to be diagnosed with it. And my symptoms, I feel the same way about my symptoms. I learned from my symptoms, right? So that's my story.
Wow.
So much awesomeness just came out in the last 10 minutes.
Glenda, I'm so glad we had you on the podcast because I feel like this is like meant for other people. Like a podcast is meant for other people to listen to. Yeah. But I truly feel like it's just made for us. Like I feel like I really wanted to hear that. I really needed to hear that. And now it's just like I don't care if anyone else hears that because I feel like it was just for me.
This one's for us. We don't. This is not being recorded. I find it amazing. You use the terms bipolar saved me. I think that is such a cool way of looking at it. I think it's so easy to think, how did this happen to me? Why me? Right? Like we start to blame ourselves. We start to victimize ourselves. Whatever we might do. When you flip the script like that, it just completely just takes the mental illness and switches it on its head. It becomes you control it rather than it controlling you, which is the whole goal, right, of any mental illness. But I do have a ton of questions, so
sure,
I'm ready to jump in whenever.
Yeah, and also I do want to say, I've been appreciative of you, especially Sarah, being mindful, like you don't have to share this or this and that. I appreciate that, but honestly, like I'm open, so you can ask me anything. I just want to share that, just so you're not afraid. Like I'm really okay. Like I don't take it personal when it comes to my condition. So please feel free.
Okay.
So I'm curious, during these manic episodes where you experience psychosis as well, do you, at this point, if it came about and they kept bringing up, could you start to tell the difference between whether it was a manic episode or whether it was real life? Or is that something that you were never able to develop until you just kind of got rid of the whole episodes themselves?
For the most part, so I've had 3 manic episodes, right? So those three breakdowns, right? And so because, there's something called manic features where it's like, it kind of resembles mania, but it's not quite like episode. Because for me, my mania is always extreme. It's never something small like, oh, Glenda, just go in your room, let it out. It's always extreme. So I have 3. So with most of them, no, in the moment, I can't tell what's real, what's not. And I think one of the reasons why I can't tell is because the psychosis is involved. Like it just, mania, you're already here. And then now I'm dealing with psychosis, and the psychosis really tries to tell me like, this is what's real, the delusions, the paranoid thoughts, all of that. So I'm never able to figure out reality until honestly, they stick a needle in my leg or, give me this really fast acting orange liquid. And then that's when my brain, it's almost like, the best way I can describe it, it's almost like my brain, my frontal lobe temporarily stops working. And then until the psychosis kind of goes down, which is only when they give me medication, then the brain starts to come back like, okay, Glenda, that's a thought. So to answer your question, in the beginning, no, but once they give me that medication and I'm hospitalized, I have a little bit of symptoms lingering. I'm like, Glenda, no, that's a delusional thought. But before then, no, I'm not able to assess what's real, what's not.
Man, that's and you said like the one you thought you were involved in a hit and run, those things must hit you for a decent amount of time. So it just kind of compounds that mania that already is going on, and the way, no matter what the situation is around.
Sorry, you. Andrew, you're a little frozen on my end.
It's all right. I was just saying these things are very serious episodes, so that just kind of builds on that mania, I gotta believe, right? If you're already at this high level of energy and then you suddenly think you were in a hit and run, that energy even more must bump up. And does it cause more and more thoughts to kind of roll through your mind, or is it usually focused on one big event?
Oh no, it's not just one. That would be too easy.
Yeah, that's too easy for you.
That would just be, we could handle that. It's literally, sometimes it's just sporadic. And I don't remember, so I remember my manic episodes and some of my psychosis, but I don't think I remember everything, but I think I remember most of it. I don't remember the order though, but it's sporadic. 1 second I'm thinking I'm in hit and run. Next second I'm in the hospital dying from a rare condition. The next second, it's sometimes sporadic, but then sometimes there is a theme. One major theme was the whole, my identity was stolen and I'm being framed by my job. So sometimes it would kind of recircle and I would say things and my parents are looking at me like, what is she talking about? Right. So sometimes certain themes would recircle, but sometimes it's literally just random. It's like, how did we go from, okay, hit and run to now you're in the precinct for something else? It's just sporadic, but I can't tell you if for example, the hit and run thought, I can't tell you if the thought is what makes it escalate to something else. I feel like I don't think it's the thought specifically. I think it's just the psychosis. The psychosis
Right.
is what's guided me, you know, like, all right, let's throw in delusional thought. All right, no hallucination today, paranoia. It just keeps just going. Like you're flipping through channels and ding, ding, ding.
Wow. So I definitely was not aware of this sort of bipolar disorder, like these sort of symptoms. I always thought it was just, well, I don't know if you've seen Modern Love. It's like this Amazon TV show.
I haven't.
There's this one episode with Anne Hathaway where she has bipolar disorder, and they're all like little love stories each episode.
Okay.
And hers, basically, she has bipolar disorder, but hers is like, I guess what I had typically thought of bipolar disorder before, where some days she cannot move or get out of bed. And then the next day she's like this like fabulous woman who flirts around and wants to do everything in the world. And so that just sort of solidified in my mind, seeing that episode of like what I thought it was. So I really had no idea like this sort of side. And I'm just thinking like what a unique perspective you have to bring to awareness of bipolar disorder, that like you've experienced something completely different from what most of the general public, I believe, believes it is.
Absolutely.
I just think that's just so cool. And I think your attitude on it all, like it's almost like it's like, you know, a blessing in your life that like you have this, but through this you found your calling in like what you love. I just think it's also awesome.
And you said a lot of great points there. And the first thing, see, that's the thing, bipolar disorder, everyone used the term bipolar for everything. Oh my God, the weather's bipolar today. Oh no, she moody, she bipolar. And I'm just like, all right, so let's reel it back in a little bit, right? So let's talk about the whole moody thing. Okay, oh, that girl moody, right? Let's talk about that. So Paul. It's so true. And it's like, like I said, I don't get offended easily. I really don't. Maybe when I was first diagnosed, but I really don't care. Like you can say that the weather is bipolar. You could say like, I don't care, but what concerns me is what about the other person who's in a vulnerable space, right? What about the person who has bipolar disorder is now afraid to talk about it because you're saying X, Y, Z. So you have to be careful, right? And that actually happened. Something similar happened to me when I went on this interview because I was at a temp job. And I was interviewing for a temp job. And so, you know, it was a small office. They're talking to me. Okay, we need you to work on this. We need you to work on that. And they're like, oh, be careful with so-and-so. I don't know. She bipolar for real. I don't think she take her medication on this day. And I play it cool. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, they're like, no, seriously, it's really bad. In my head, I'm like, yeah, I don't even know I have bipolar disorder. And I didn't tell them because I'm like, I'm gonna let you have it because someone like that, you're not even gonna want to hear it. And plus, I'm trying to get the temp job anyway, so I'm gonna let you have it. But what if it was someone else? You make a comment like that, you don't know who you're talking to, right? And so let's talk about the moody situation, right? So people are like partially right when they say, oh, this person is moody, so they might have bipolar disorder. So the number one problem with that is you can't go around diagnosing someone because honestly, any human being can be moody. Like literally, you have like you're going through a divorce, your ex-husband this, your kids that, you feel better, then you rewind it. Like, so you can't.
You can went the wrong way and be moody on a day. That moody is way too low of a word for what bipolar would be.
So that's number one. But number two, I think where people get it from is bipolar disorder is a mood disorder. So people assume, oh, mood disorder, moody. Not necessarily, because what it means to have bipolar disorder and it's a mood disorder, it means you can't manage your moods. But for some people with bipolar disorder, they might never really get as much manic episodes. They might just get depressive states and it can happen really quickly. One thought, instead of just going to, okay, I'm a little bit sad, bam, I'm severely depressed and I'm depressed for the next week, the next month. So you're having trouble managing that mood and you're having trouble bringing yourself back up. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going from one mood to the next, back to back to back. You know, that rarely actually happens to me. I think it's more so I just drop really low, really quickly, or I like escalate up and then stay there for like a period of time, right? But then there might be some people where it can be a fluctuation. right? But it doesn't necessarily have to. So that's where that aspect comes from with the mood. And the last thing you said about my perception, my perception happened, to be honest, right away while I was hospitalized, because I had a aha moment. A lot of things started making sense. I started really realizing, wow, Glenda, you have a lot to work on. Like instantly I was like, okay, what caused this? Was there something that you could have done better? And so I always look at it as a learning experience. Again, I have some challenges. There are some days where I'm like, I don't know if I can't do this. I don't know. But again, lately, I have less and less depressive states. Honestly, I don't remember my last depressive state. I still have some issues with anxiety at times, but the way I handle it, it's really interesting to see how my brain handles it, because I've been working on this for years, almost, 9 or so years. And I'm actually stronger now because of it, right? So that's why I have that unique perspective, because if it was the opposite, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. It'd just be more like, yeah, this sucks. Like, oh, life sucks. But I'm like, no, I'm gonna live. I'm living. I don't care. We live it.
We out here living for sure. I wanted to say, like, with that, overall, you bring a lot of awareness now. Something we're going to talk about later is kind of what it means to be a mental wellness advocate. But I don't want to ask you that yet. I want to more so ask, you said it's helping you. Is a lot of that because when you're going through and you're an advocate, you're constantly learning yourself, you're reading books, you're doing whatever you possibly can to kind of learn about this stuff. I know when I'm done with this, and I already was planning on before, but it kind of snuck up on me and I wasn't as prepared. I was going to read into bipolar a lot more. And my brother, who was actually going to teach a little course to me on bipolar, which I'm still going to have him do. But I just like those things allow us to kind of understand ourselves a little more, I think, as we read. Yeah. And for you must, focusing on one specific thing, you must have such a depth of knowledge of kind of what you're looking at. So it's able to also almost make you critique yourself and say, whoa, this is what this type of bipolar looks like. This is how I should be reacting, or maybe back it up and kind of let things go their course. But I do want to jump back to those last two episodes you said you had in January 2017 and August 2017.
Yeah, December 2016 is the second one.
Okay, yes. So the most recent one is the one I want to focus on. Yeah. You said you could tell you handled it better. I would love to just know specifically what did you recognize that you did differently from that time, between the time of December 2016 or one of your original episodes. Did I cut out?
You did. So can you?
I just want to know more specifically about how you said you handled it better when you got to this August 2017 one compared to your prior experiences. Could you tell us a little more specifically how you handled it better?
Yeah. Before I answer that, can I actually briefly answer how I handled December 2016 differently too? Because that really blew my mind. Just a small part of it really blew my mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. December 2016, I was at physical therapy because I had sprained my back. We're not getting into that, but I was in physical therapy and I'm laying face down, and they had like the heating thing on my back, and I literally the definition of racing thoughts, like, and it just kept going, and I felt like I was just seeing like lights, and after a while it was so overwhelming, I literally just like kind of screamed. I was like, ah! And they're like, are you okay? What's wrong? I was like, and I like started crying, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling well. I just need to go. Like, okay, Glenda, here's some water. So I left. So in my mind, instantly I was like, okay, Glenda, I was trying to calm myself down. So that's one thing, one difference is the self-talk. Like, I'm like, okay, sweetheart, it's okay. We're gonna get you help. You can do this. You got this, right? Because at first I couldn't say, oh, it's a breakdown. I'm like, okay, something's happening. So I was like, all right, let me go ahead and take the train, because I'm from New York City. So let me take the train and get to, there's a program I was part of. I was like, I think they can help me. So let me just go there. I literally took the steps down to the train and I was like, I'm not going to make it. Like I felt the mania just increasing, and I'm just like, I don't think I'll even make it. I just need to get out the station. And by that time, as I'm like walking back to the physical therapy place, I can feel my symptoms getting worse and worse. And I was like, dang it, I think this is a breakdown. And so I called my sister. My sister, oh my gosh, she's like, I don't even have words. She's literally my savior when it comes to mental health. It's very interesting. But anyway, so I call her and I'm just like crying. I'm like, it's happening again. And she's like, what's happening? What's wrong? Is that okay? Is mom, what's happening? I was like, it's happening again. It's happening again. I think I'm having a breakdown. And I'm like talking to her, telling her it. And then she's like, okay, it's fine. I'm going to get you through it. Let me call dad to come pick you up, all of that. And so as I'm talking to her, my symptoms are getting worse and worse. And when my symptoms are getting worse, I'm more stubborn. Again, my brain temporarily paralyzes. So I'm more stubborn. I'm not making sense. So I'm doing all that with my sister. But then there's a moment where I'll pause and I'll be like, but I'll be okay. I'm not going to be hospitalized. I'll be okay. And I'll go back to my symptoms. And then I'll go back. I'll be okay. So I was affirming my mental wellness in the midst of a freaking manic episode. Who does that? Who does that? Right. So that was the first moment where I was just like, wait a minute. And my sister was like, yes, you will be okay. And then I go back to mania. Right. So that was number one. And so with the 2017 one, that one was an intense one. It was just as intense as the first breakdown. And again, because I didn't know it was happening. Well, actually, there was a period of time I did kind of feel like it was happening, and I was almost able to kind of contain the mania, like almost to the point where I realized it. And I'm telling my mom, I'm like, my mom realized, like I was on the phone with her. She was like, okay, we got to take mom to the hospital. Like this is, we can tell. And I was like, okay, mom, I'm really scared, but I think I'm going to try to stay calm. I just need help. Like I'm literally like trying to calm down mania, but eventually I kind of lost it, and it just it took over. But for a period of time I was able to like stay relatively like calm despite the symptoms. And they're interviewing me at the hospital and I'm talking to them and they're looking at me all funny because they're like, okay, I can tell she's kind of manic, but she's a little calm, like what's going on? But then eventually it just exploded. But another way that I handled it, one example is after the breakdown. So that breakdown was intense because I was actually hospitalized twice back to back, like within 2 days. So that for
this
3
weeks. Is this the August one?
Yeah. So it was intense. It really was intense. But afterwards, that's what really amazed me was what I did afterwards. So afterwards, I'm finally released. And I that sounds like I was in prison. But anyways, I was discharged. And I was better, but I was still having mania, but without much psychosis per se. It was straight mania. I wasn't sleeping much. I would get like an hour and a half of sleep every night. Like I just couldn't sleep. My mood it was just a mess. I was in a psychiatric office like every week with another issue because they changed my medication and I was having side effects. It was just a mess between side effects to my mania not going away no matter what the psychiatrist gave me. It was a mess. But in the moment, despite going on an hour and a half of sleep every single night for a good 3 weeks, 4 weeks, my mind kept going, like, all right, Glenda, like something's off. What's off? Can you think about it? Like, how can we get you out of this? This usually doesn't happen. What's going on? I'm literally like assessing it. And then finally it came to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I know what the issue is. And one of the issues were there's a medication called lorazepam. It's used for anxiety, but because of my mania and also I have anxiety, they'll give me lorazepam as a medication during the hospital stay. So they gave it to me because it's a controlled substance. They're like, all right, Glenda, okay, we're not giving you lorazepam. We're giving you everything else, controlled substance. We can't give it to you, blah, blah, blah. But that was the problem. I was on it for a good 2 weeks and you just cut it off. And so my mania was activated again. And then that was one of the issues. You can't just cut it off. Like I need it for a little bit longer at least. And so I noticed that. And then I also noticed, I was like, you know what? They need to get me back on the old medication, one of the old medications that they had me on before. I was like, that's what I need. And I'm coming up with this in the middle of having manic episodes and all types of issues. I figured it out. And then I went to my psychiatrist. I'm like, yo, this is what it is. This is what I need. And she's like, oh, okay. All right, let's try that. And like instantly it was starting to work. So things like that, the way I'm able to have symptoms, but still be able to advocate for myself and still be able to realize what I need and sit and think about it. So that's what I mean in terms of how I handled it.
Awesome. That's unbelievable and crazy introspective to be able to do that in the middle of an episode. I can't even imagine that sort of awareness in yourself at that point. But I want to jump back and give a little shout out to your sister. But I mainly want to ask about her. So you say she's her savior, right? I just want to know, like, what does she do? What can our loved ones do, you think, in these situations? What are the best ways to like relate to these people that are going through this?
Yeah, so my sister is actually my younger sister. And so when I talk about her when it comes to my mental wellness, I think people assume like, oh, she must be your older sister. She's so wise. She's this. And they're like, oh, she must be a social worker or a psychologist. And I'm like, nope, she's none of those things.
She's my sister.
Yeah, like I personally feel like she was just blessed with the gift to be able to help her sister. Like I really do believe like she was just like, because when I first had my first breakdown, my sister was still in high school. She was only like 17. You know what I mean? And so it's like for her to have this type of wisdom so young, like that's not something you can just, I don't know, learn or whatever the case is, because she wasn't learning anything. She just knew what to do. It is really, really amazing. So yeah, but my sister now, she is a nurse. But for every breakdown that I've had though, she wasn't a nurse yet. So that's interesting. So she became a nurse. She was always interested in being a nurse though, but she just became a nurse not too long ago, about a year-ish ago. But yeah, so with my sister, what it is she's just very non-judgmental. So if I call her with symptoms, she tries to just rationalize it instead of freaking out. Oh my gosh, my sister, she's just like, okay, all right, it's all right. This is what needs to be done. We have to call dad. Dad has to come pick you up. And then like, even though I'm like, no, she's like, this is what needs to be done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's like firm, but then not. Yeah. And then would make me feel comfortable even in the midst of them. Yeah. To like trust what she's saying, and even like, what was really, really interesting when I had my first breakdown, at the time I was at my boyfriend's apartment. I mean, he's my ex, but at the time he was my boyfriend. I was with him when this happened. And when he saw what was happening, he's kind of just like, okay, I don't know what's happened. I'm gonna have to call her mom. Like, I don't know, like she won't get in the car. Like so he called my mom and they're like, okay, we're gonna drive over with her. And so while they're driving to come to me, I kept talking to my mom, but I would hang up after like 7 seconds because I'm like, nope, the FBI is listening. So like, we're not doing this. And so I kept like hanging up and my mom was like, what is going on? Like, she was just confused. And then one time my sister kind of took the phone, and then this I think will blow your mind. In the middle of my symptoms, she's like, listen carefully. Like, she's slowing down her speech. I'm like, how do you know to do that? She's like, listen carefully. And I'm like, for a second, I'm like, She's like, okay, nobody is trying to hurt you. Nobody, okay? I'm like, nobody's trying to, oh, okay. We just want to help. I'm like, oh, okay. And then she's like, you have schizophrenia. Now, she was like, off about the symptom, but she realized there's something mental going on. And honestly, like, I don't know how long that conversation lasted, but for those like few minutes, for a minute, I really was calm. I really was like, wow, is that what's happening to me? It's schizophrenia. But then before I can even process it, a delusional thought comes in. But just to show you her nature. So to answer your other part of the question, how can a loved one help someone? It's tricky because it depends on the person. But the first thing you can do is just be there. That's the best thing to do, support. Like my mom, so my mom's also a nurse, but she's not a psychiatric nurse. And my sister's not a psychiatric nurse either. Just wanna.
They're still amazing.
Yeah. And so with my mom, I remember telling her, like, Mom, I really do appreciate you and Dad, like, really supporting me. Like, thank you. And she's like, one thing I learned in nursing school, when I took the psych class, they always say the best thing you do, support. So that's just what we try to do for you, is support. And it's like, that's so true. And you get to support the way you can support. I don't think there's one way, because not everyone can give the support my sister gets, for example. But like, someone might be like my dad. My dad is more, because he's not in the medical professional field. So he's just more like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. But he shows support by showing up. When I'm hospitalized, he comes and visits me twice a day. He comes and brings his siblings with him. All right, she's in the hospital, go visit her. Like, he'll drive me to my appointments. You see what I mean? So it's like, I think the best thing to do is just support in the way you can provide, and just non-judgmentally be there for the person without being like, you got what? Go pray. You something's wrong with you. Like, no, you got to be like, okay, let's talk it through. I mean, I understand, but how can you can't ask, how can I be there for you? But some people don't know. But just be there. That's the best you can do. Chat. What does it take to be a mental wellness advocate? Is the
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I want to say is a lot of times people hear the term mental health advocate, and that is what I called myself for a while. But the only reason why I changed it to mental wellness advocate is I feel like to me it's bigger than just mental health. I feel like if you're a mental health advocate, you're specifically advocating for mental health symptoms, mental health conditions. But someone made me realize that I do more than that. For me, it's not just about mental health, it's just mental wellness. And mental wellness is for everyone or anyone, whether you have a mental health condition or not. And I feel like I'm really big on that because for me, it's not just about helping those who have bipolar disorder or any other mental health condition. It's just about where is your mind? What's going on in your mind? And that's one of the reasons why I have the perception about my condition, because I don't take it as, okay, my mental health needs to be better. I'm like, no, what can I do to make my mind better? Right. And so that's why I tap into calling it mental wellness advocate. And so what does it take to be a mental wellness advocate? I mean, honestly, it doesn't take much. I feel like it's a title that you give yourself if you feel like that's your title, right? It's not one of those things where, I'm a nurse, so I went to nursing school and I had to take the RN exam and this and that. It's just a term that you coin for yourself. And I feel like everyone might use it differently. But for me, it just means inspiring others and being the best that they can be in your mind, because your mind is what starts everything that you want to accomplish. It starts with your mind, literally, whether it's mental health, increasing your mental health, whether it's you want to, success in a business, whatever the case is. And I'm so big on that, like the wellness of your mind. Because if your mind's not there, it's going to be very, very challenging to accomplish anything, whether it's mental health related or not.
I don't even think we need to try to answer that because that was really great.
Yeah, I wasn't going to touch that one with the time for poll because I never really thought about the terms being different. I kind of, you look at things like mental wellness, mental health, mental illness, like obviously mental illness and mental health kind of probably, like you say, focus a little bit more on actual diagnosed diseases, rather than mental wellness, which to you is just about being the best you can be, being happy in yourself, and whatever your underlying illnesses are. That's the goal, is to just forget they exist almost.
Or I wouldn't forget they exist, but work with them, right?
That's a bad way of putting it.
Personally, no, it's okay. Personally, this is just my personal opinion. I can't speak for every single person, but I kind of feel like there's a reason why I attracted bipolar disorder into my life. I don't believe this whole, it's genetics, it's just life. No, like there was an aspect of my mental wellness that I was not taken care of. And then it leads to disease, right? The same way if they say, okay, if you eat chips and McDonald's all day, every day, you're not taking care of your physical wellness, then eventually it's going to lead to a physical health condition, right? So that's just my perspective about it. So everyone has the birthright for mental wellness. And I think I'm more passionate about that as a whole. It's just more so the mental health aspect is what started this mental wellness journey for me, right? Bipolar disorder started it, but it led to this whole wellness journey.
Interesting.
Amazing.
So first off, I'd like to
I just had to write that down. It was that good. Everyone has a birthright to mental wellness. Oh my gosh. I was like, let me type that out real fast.
I literally watched your eyes lit up
but that's what I believe.
When she said that sentence. I watched Sarah light up. That's what it is.
I think we forget about that though. We focus more on, okay, make sure you eat your fruits, eat your vegetables. Okay, your physical health, education, but we don't raise children about their mental wellness. Like, all right, what's going on in your mind? Let's work on your mind. There's no school, there's no class on it. Like, I had to learn the hard way. So
yeah, like even something as simple as like writing 3 things a day that you're grateful for.
Yeah.
I mean, like the only people in the world that do that are people who have suffered with some sort of depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
Or any sort of mental illness after that. But why is that the case? Why should we not just have a couple of 3rd graders writing something that they're grateful for every day in class?
Yeah,
Like
no, I agree.
literally, just like it would be so easy, and then just create it. But like these things just don't exist at this point. I mean, we're still working towards being even able to accept. Some countries are not even accepting these as diseases, right? So we still are working there.
Yeah.
So, Glenda, we do have to let you go. But before we do so, I want you to tell us all about any projects you're working on, your blog, your book. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your book and just kind of plug whatever you want to plug right now.
Yeah, the biggest plug is my book, 100%. So it's, as we mentioned earlier, it's called Letters to My Bipolar Self. See, I was unprepared. I should have taken it out and like showed it, but
yeah, you should have lifted it up. Signed copy for our first listener, right? Like you should have done it.
Yeah, I'm not prepared for that. I don't know why. Usually I am, but no big deal. It's okay. Letters to My Bipolar Self, right? A very unique title, and it's, as you mentioned, Andrew, perfect. It is a series of 50 letters that I wrote to myself, and like I mentioned, self-love has been one of the biggest aspects of this journey for me. And that's challenging to do when you have mental health issues, right? And so you still have to find a way to love yourself despite what it is that you're going through. And these letters are raw, okay? So I literally either wrote them in real time or I took notes based on something that happened and I would write it later on. And so they're real. You're gonna read it and be like, oh my gosh, wow, that really happened. There's no, I didn't finesse it in any other way. And so, yeah, so you can find my book on Barnes and Nobles or Amazon.com. I am planning on releasing it on my own website, but for right now, that's still in the works. So Barnes and Noble, Amazon.com, definitely check out my book. And yeah, that's mostly it. With my blog, so you can check out my blog as well. But I must admit, I'm kind of slacking with the blog right now. It's a fight. I'm working on it. But there are posts on there. So it's not like there's nothing on there. So you can go back, but it's not as up to date as it needs to be. But it's there. It's there.
That's all right. We're good.
And of course, Instagram is also a great resource at Rising from Bipolar. Everything is Rising from Bipolar for me. But Instagram is a great resource, especially if you go back on my posts as well, because I have a lot of interesting posts about different things: inspiration, anxiety, depression, sometimes a little bit of what I've been through, what I've learned, things like that. So that's what I have so far. In terms of projects I'm working on, we're gonna hold off on that for now.
Okay, you can come back to us.
That was a hell of a good plug session. I'm very.
But I will say one thing. I will give you guys a little bit of a scoop. Ooh. My book is actually going to be a series. So, yeah. So.
Everybody heard it here first. That's exciting. So. How far are we into the works of the new one?
So to be honest, a very, very rough draft of the book 2 is there. So the rough draft is there. But I think I want to wait because I just published the first one in April, I think it was. So I kind of want to wait a little bit, get some more people and more community members into the first book before just releasing the book number 2. And I also want to be able to make sure I have the funding for it as well, because the way I did things for the first one, kind of want to do things differently for book number 2. So I want to make sure I have the right amount of funding instead of just trying to be like, oh, let me try to do everything myself or such like that. So I don't have a date, but
all right. Well, once that does pop up on the shelves, I think we may be having to repeat this and bring you back on. And we can replug, but we can also hear more stories and you can kind of go a little more in depth on kind of what the 2 books are about. I have a pretty good feeling based on how I'm feeling right now that our listeners are going to be very much into that as well.
Yeah. I missed the first half of what you said.
Of course. I said next time when your book comes out, it will be great to bring you back on and we can have another discussion.
Yeah. And I could even do like a mini read-in too. Like
that's what I'm thinking. I think just we focus on the 2 books as a whole, and we kind of look into exactly what's going on in the second one.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it too, because I told you it happened in real time. I wrote the books in the past, not too far in the past. I think my first letter for my first book is like 2016. So what's really interesting is to be able to look at the date of the letter and then look at where I'm at now, because it's different. I feel like some of the things that I talk about in my book it's going to be in the past. So you're reading it like, oh man, is she going through this now? It's like, not necessarily. This is what I went through. And so where am I now? Where am I at with that now? So that's really interesting.
Awesome. All right. So thank you so much for coming on, Glenda. We are going to sign off. Say goodbye to all of our listeners. Thank you very much. Click like in the bottom of the screen. Do whatever you do, whatever it might be.
Andrew, so were you saying something?
Yeah, I'm frozen all the time. Don't worry about it. I would just say thank you so much, Glenda. It was so lovely having this conversation, and goodbye to all of our listeners today.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, for this whole, that's a whole story, how we met and how this is happening. We're not going to touch on that now, but I appreciate you thinking of me, and I appreciate all of you for having me. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Thank you, listeners.